Hey everybody, welcome back to Character Design. This is Instructor Phil Dimitriadis. So what we're going to do in this quick demo here is we're just going to talk about the importance of having two different types of turnarounds inside your portfolio. Okay, most common type of turnaround that you're going to have to do is an orthographic turnaround. We already did a demo on that. I'm just going to show you a quick sample of that. Okay, here's a sample I grabbed from online that's done very nice. It's when you have a base character and someone's going to come over, they're going to ask you to turn that character in a front, side, and reverse view. That's just to provide information for a 3D team or a modeler. I'm also a modeler and I model props and environments, and a lot of times, also being an illustrator and a conceptual artist coming from the drawing side, I get placed on productions where I do both. I'm modeling and I'm working, and then I'm drawing and designing. Then I have to incorporate that. Now some of you in here don't have that background in Maya. If you don't have a background in Maya where you can mock something up really rough and just do quick orthographic views and renders off of that, you have to resort to your drawing experience. This is a standard orthographic view, and you'll notice there's no perspective change that's happening in here. Okay, so this is sort of a new view that was, you know, as the height of the CG industry keeps moving and motivating, especially with work going overseas, you're going to be required to produce these orthographic views. Now, in animation, there is a difference sometimes, and this is pretty common. You might be working on a show where you design a character, and then they ask you to do a turnaround sheet, which is not an orthographic sheet. There's a difference. Okay, so the orthographic straight views, front, side, reverse, no perspective. Okay, all right. When you go to the, and there's that example. Once you go to a turnaround sheet, here's a sample of one. Okay, this is when you're working on an animated show, and maybe a storyboard artist or somebody else down the pipeline, they want to know what your character looks like when they're turned in more of a perspective view. This is when you have to go in and you have to basically have some indication of a horizon line and a ground plane line to understand how to turn your character in 3D. Okay, so the difference on this, if we look at these samples right here, okay, I'm just going to lightly draw on top of this, is look at where the feet are. And look at how I can see a center line to the feet. And that's actually a key little secret to doing these poses. So let me show you an example here. You see this line from here to here? If I take my ruler and if I come back over and if I sketch that through sort of like the opposite side, and then I have a sort of a center line that goes through my character, and part of that center line I'm also going to have the mass of the body be usually above that line, okay? That's the importance here, is understanding that. So I'd like to prepare my students to be able to do both. Okay, and a good sample of that is, let me show you Christina's work, okay, from another semester. Right here, she has standard front, side, and reverse view and orthographic views. Okay, and look, she labeled it orthographic. And down here, we have more of a character turn in perspective. Okay, so the character turn in perspective, we're going to have other 3/4 views inside there. So if you notice, look at this. Here's the character in a front 3/4. That's front, that's side, reverse. Then we have this view right here. Okay, we now have a reverse 3/4 view where we're looking at the center line back of the character, and we could see actually the little ground plane of how that little triangle, rectangular shape of how the character is standing on there. Okay, so you guys are working on the orthographic view right now, but now we're going to sort of make this transition into doing a turnaround view with a ground plane. And I'm going to show you how to create the ground plane. It's really simple, okay? What's great, this is reference I've already posted on the blog for you. This was from Balto, okay? One of our instructors here, Joe Weatherly, okay, that's teaching the animal drawing class, actually went onto this production and showed a lot of their animators how to draw animals in perspective correctly, and he's probably part responsible for some of these sheets being developed and matching. Okay, but when you look over here, you're going to notice a couple little things. Like, let's look at this particular character, right? I can just barely see, one second, I'm on the wrong layer here. I can barely see on top of him right here. You see that? So, but what I can see is I can see the distance between his feet, and I can see where they connect, and I can see where that center line mass is going to be. Okay. In this particular view, if I block that as a square, I can see on top of him. So here, even though he's at a side view, I can still see a little bit on top. I'm going to guesstimate that whoever did this, they probably started off with a rough sketch, probably a horizon line about like right here on top of the head. Because we can see just on top of the nose, do you see that? We can see a little bit on top of the nose there. Then everything else that's underneath that horizon line, we can see on top of. So that's Perspective Basics 101. If I have a coffee cup, and if this is my horizon line right here, okay, and if I drop my coffee cup underneath that horizon line, I'm going to be able to see underneath there. If I drop it even further, I'm going to be able to see more of that ellipse. And if I drop it even further, I'm going to be able to see really on top of that cup. And it's the same principle. If I draw above that line with my coffee cup, I'll now be able to see slightly on top of the cup. Excuse me, what am I saying? Underneath the cup. If I continue to raise that cup above, I'm going to be able to see a little bit more underneath that cup, okay? So those principles of perspective, when you do a character, remember this is a perspective turnaround, not an orthographic, we're going to be able to see those changes happening in here. So step 1, we put the horizon line in. Step 2, we're going to draw a rough grid for the ground plane, okay? Step 3, we're going to measure, almost start with drawing just this basic triangular, rectangular shape that exists on the ground plane and understand how that rectangle is going to allow us to place a character inside there. Okay, really simple. And then after that, step 4 right here is we're going to work into shape. We're going to start drawing the simple shapes with center lines on them, understanding their construction lines and understanding how all these hook up together. Remember, part of your turnaround and doing a successful turnaround that makes sense to a modeler, especially if you have a character that has clothes on, is understanding the core primitive shapes that are underneath that character. If you don't have that understanding in there, you're not going to have a good turnaround or orthographic view. Okay, let me minimize this sample. I want to show you another sample I thought that was really nicely done. Okay, so when we look at this one right here, okay, look at the position of the character. Now here's a great example where they're even changing a couple of the poses. Here the character, you know, is sort of upright and vertical with the legs close in. Here the character is being turned with the head down and we're sort of looking down on him. The one thing that's going to be consistent here is this. Look at the base. Look at how that character is sitting basically on that rectangular base right there, okay? Look at this character here, how he's being posed, and we can see right there. Now, we can't really see on top of him that much, okay? We're not looking down on him. So in this particular pose, I would say the horizon line is probably about like right there, okay? I can see on top of the nose here because he's turned towards me, okay? And his nose is facing, his head plane is facing downwards underneath that horizon line, so I can see on top there. These are important little questions that you have to ask yourself, but I wanted to give you some of the basic steps on how to apply this into your turnaround. So, okay, step 1. So I'll just write this out for you guys. Step 1, even though my writing's horrible, right? We're going to define a horizon line inside our piece. Okay? Step 2, the next part of this is after we have that horizon line set, we want to establish, well, some of these sort of overlap each other, but I like to call it my rectangle. Okay, I want to establish, actually I should just say the ground plane that our character is going to exist on. Plane. Okay, now step 3, we'll establish the rectangle on there. Okay, step 4 is I want you to draw a vertical line from the center. So you find the center of that ground plane and you draw a line straight up. The reason why that's going to be really important is when you're dealing with a human figure, the majority of the mass of that character is going to be off of that line. And you have, that's acts as sort of like your center line. It gives you a good idea to understand where the character is in relationship. And then when we go to turn him, we want to make sure, like for example here, that main center line is right here through the body. Right here, look, it matches up. The main center line is right here. Then the head pitches forward from right here. Then the head pitches forward. So that's why those two drawings are accurate. Animators that can do this very well and good character designers usually come from a very strong drawing background of understanding shape and being able to draw shapes in multiple points of view in perspective, okay? So that's all we're basically doing is we're creating that horizon line. Step 2, we're then going to establish a basic ground plane with a grid that our characters exist on. Step 3 then, we're going to draw, sorry my writing's so horrible here, I'm too busy talking. We're going to establish our rectangle that exists on there. Step 4, we're going to draw a vertical line above that. And then now step 5, we're going to start to sketch in the shapes of our character. Okay, the basic, I'm going to put /primitive shapes of our character. And then step 6, then is when you're going to come in with line and detail and start to overlap it. Okay, so again, when I look at that, you don't see the undersketch that that artist did, but here you see it. That's why that's such a great example. Here are the basic shapes that exist. Even having a shape structure like that, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You know why? That's going to help a storyboard artist understand how to turn your character in a different angle and understand how to draw them from a different point of view. Why is that so important? When I teach a basic drawing for entertainment arts class here at school, where I cover principles about basic drawing, one of the hardest things for students to do is to learn how to draw the figure correctly. One of the easiest ways to learn how to draw the figure correctly is to learn how to draw the wooden mannequin out of your head. And the only way to do that, I've been working with a couple students this semester, giving them assignments outside of class. The only way to do that is to draw a horizon line, understand where the ground plane is, and then come in and be able to draw the mannequin from multiple views in different perspectives, understanding the basic shapes that that mannequin is made out of. Once you understand that, you can take that wooden mannequin, you can put it away, and out of your imagination, you can draw the human figure in basic primitive shapes from any perspective you want out of your imagination, once you've given enough mileage to doing that. That same principle is going to apply here in what you guys are doing with your character design turns. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to wrap this up here really quick. I just had a couple of those samples to show you. Here's another sample here. Okay, so if we look at this, what are the similarities we're going to find? You're going to find that basic rectangular square existing. If we cross and find the middle of that, you'll find the center line that that character is existing on. Okay, in this particular point of view, I'd say probably the horizon line is up a little bit high because we can see this angled plane on the face. And no matter what angle that character turns, we can still see on top of that particular angle, even if we're looking from behind. Okay, so that's why you have to understand where that horizon line is, because that is your guiding line. Just like I said about the coffee cup, if my coffee cup is underneath there, it's going to be that way right there. Now let's say it's not a coffee cup. What if it's a cube? Okay, let's say if I have a, I don't know, a Jack-in-the-Box hamburger box, right? And if I draw that from a front view, there's going to be my cube shape. If I draw that from a 3/4 side view, it's going to be something more, sorry for the crooked line, it's going to be something more like that. And then if I have to even turn that a little bit more, okay, uh-oh, hold on, I don't know what I just did there. I grabbed another tool that we didn't mean to grab. Let's go back to eraser. And if I have to turn that more, I'm still going to barely see on top of that box. It's going to look something like that if I rough it in. Okay, so see what I'm getting at here? That horizon line is really important. In the orthographic view, we didn't really have a horizon line. We just had horizontal lines going sideways that were marker lines. This is different. Okay, and another reason why this is so important is that one of your other jobs as a character designer is going to be to provide expression sheets of your character and poses doing different types of things. This is extremely key to that. Before you even start an expression sheet as a beginner and a noob, you have to understand where that horizon line is going to be so you're drawing your key character in correct shape language, okay? I posted these up on the blog site for you. I'm giving you this information for you to look at, okay? So it's all there for you. And again, if you have any questions about what it's supposed to look like, here's a great example. Look at this page that Christina put in her portfolio. This page is excellent. If I was working on a show and I had a character designer I wanted to bring in, someone had a character design, a bunch of sheets and expression sheets, and didn't show me they had the ability to do a turnaround, I might be a little reluctant to want to hire them. I've been in that position on 4 different shows where I've been on the artistic recruitment board or worked with someone else in HR to bring people in for our productions. Okay, so I know what I'm talking about when I'm saying that people like to look for this. It's an important part of the show. Okay, all right, so you basically know what you have to do, and if you want to even take a look at Christina's here, you can. You know, look at this. She still has sidelines in here marking the character. That's totally fine, understanding how they're turning, but she also has a light line in here somewhere, probably about here, which is her horizon line, and then she has that rectangle being turned. Everyone in this class has had basic drawing. You should be able to do this, okay? You should be able to come up on a new layer. You should be able to throw down a horizon line, and then you should be able to come in here and draw a basic rectangle. And then you should be able to rotate that rectangle. So look, even if I have to do this like this, and I'm going to put a center line on that. The only difference is when I rotate now, I know where my horizon line is. This particular shape is receding back to one vanishing point. Now when I go to rotate it, right, I'm just including another vanishing point. So look, that middle line right there, that marker, that's the middle. So my next line, as I go to rotate that, see this? I'm going to get my 90 in there. So now I recede that back. That's a vanishing point. I'm going to take this right here and recede that line back. That's going to be a vanishing point. I can come back off of those vanishing points like this. And I can draw that base. So do you see how I did that? That's that base now turned in 2-point perspective. Okay. Now if I wanted to, with Photoshop, I could just take this and flip it the other way. Okay. Or I could just come over here and just redraw it again. Okay, so I could draw it going the other angle. So this is the important part. And again, look, if I cross this, I find the center. I'm on that same line. I draw a line. Oops, I went swerving there. Try to hold shift. I draw a line straight up. You see that? Once I have that line straight up, that's my center line for my character. That enables me to understand, hey, I have a foot here. I have a knee here. I have a foot here. That knee comes up here. It hooks up to a series of hips. Since it's above my horizon line, if I'm looking up at those hips, I'm going to be seeing that type of line on the pants, let's say. Okay, this is what we talk about with basic construction. Okay, so then if I have a leg that's coming up here, I'm just making this up out of my head. Let's just say I have a character that's coming down here. He now has a foot that's going this way. The foot's in the shape of a block. I draw that foot in here. Okay, and now if I come upwards to that foot, and now when I'm drawing the top, I know I'm looking up at that line, so I'm going to see that type of line right here. Okay, so then if I come in and I draw his head shape, okay, so I'm basically, what am I drawing right now, folks? Does anyone know? I'm drawing the wooden mannequin that I've spent years drawing, that I learned way back in the day. Okay, so his arm from here is being foreshortened downward, so I know where my horizon line is. I know that's going to be a foreshortened cylinder right there. And let's say I have his hand just sort of doing this. Okay, see that? It's really basic. Now I come over and I draw those basic shapes in all my other poses. Okay, for my turnaround. Then I come back over and I come back with my contour line and go on top of that and match up the character. Do you see the difference? Well, we don't do it the other way. We don't start with the contour line. We're starting with shapes first. We're understanding the basics, that I have this center line. We're understanding where the feet hit, that in between those feet there's a center line that goes up. And we did all that just by figuring out the basics of perspective. So look, if I start with this line right here, boom, that's a vanishing point right there for that line. There's my 90-degree angle. I move that back. I'm going off the page a little bit there. So my horizon line's a teeny bit off the page. Okay, now that's a little close because my center has to be right there. So it might be something more like this and more like that. It's actually way in perspective to find that middle mark, but I'm just going to eyeball it right now. Okay, get that in there and get that in there, and that's about the middle point right there. Do you see that? Oops, hold on, I hit something there. So that's my middle point. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, I just gave you guys those steps, is after the horizon line and you get the ground plane down there. Okay, now that's one thing I didn't do, is sometimes it helps people. I've worked with artists and designers that after they put the horizon line down, They just like to sketch like a really light ground plane and 1-point perspective. That's up to you if you want to do that. That's totally fine. The thing about that, the reason why I skip over that a little bit is because when I'm turning my character is that I'm basically turning, it's like turning a book in a room. So if I take this eraser right here in front of me and I put it like this in front of my eyes, this is in 1-point perspective. When I come over here and draw my character turned, I'm drawing that base now at 2-point perspective. It's in an angle, which means I'm going to have 2 vanishing points on my horizon line. Everyone follows that. Everyone in here should know that, those basics. Okay? And then the same thing goes. And when I'm finished with all this, that's how you successfully draw your character being turned around in what I call like an animation style, not an orthographic, but just a base character turnaround. So that's important. If you guys are out there and you're working and someone says, hey, we need you to do turnarounds, you need to be able to reply back and say, what kind of turnarounds? Do you want orthographic turnarounds for a 3D modeler? Or do you want just expression turnarounds for a board artist or for an art pack? So what's an art pack? An art direction pack is when you're working on a production and someone's designed the core characters, and so you have the characters, you have the props, you have the vehicles, the location. Then when a storyboard artist comes who's doing freelance, because a lot of board artists do freelance, right? They work on multiple productions. They let's say they arrive at Warner Brothers, okay? They pick up an art direction pack, which is a packet of like 50 sheets of paper with a clip on it. In that pack, it'll have all this information. It'll have the characters in turns. It'll have the core characters front view, orthographic. It'll have the props. It'll have all that information out for you. But it's really important, just a little note, okay, where students screw this up is when they bypass some of this and where the feet don't connect and make sense. And that is huge, especially, I know we're doing people standing upright because that's the easiest pose as first timers, but a lot of times what I mean by that is the paw, for example, on a I can't think right now, on a quadrupeded animal, okay, with 4 feet, you have to understand the difference between those feet, and then how would that go to here? And then if I raise up, how is that foot being elevated, and is it drawing correctly? Some people will draw it as if the foot is in the ground, or they make one leg longer than the other leg. Those are common mistakes of students. I will walk around and I will notice that in your guys' work, and I will point that out to you really quickly. Because, like, you know, this is correct. Look at the way that animal's standing. Look at the center line of that foot, how it matches that center line, how it matches that, and how these are in perspective towards each other. Okay, students will accidentally draw one foot too long, where it's going actually past the front foot, and you can see like here where it's hitting, they're both on the level line. That doesn't look right. That means the foot's been extended. It's not drawn correctly. Okay, part of your understanding of how shapes and elements work is all comes back to your basics of basic drawing and perspective, which are elements you guys should have learned and been taught. Okay, all right, that's it. I'm going to stop the demo right here. Have fun on this. So finish your turnarounds in rough shape, then go in and start to rough this out. And the reason why this is important, I worked on a show once and we had a really round bulbous character, actually quite similar to the character right here that Christina had, that she designed. Okay, and what happened is that as we were turning the character, we noticed a problem with the legs and how the legs connected to the base of the hips. We had to change that in order to make the character animatable, so it would animate in 3D. It wouldn't have worked then. When we changed that character, that changed the look and the design of the character. It affected the turnaround and the orthographic view. That's why I wanted you guys to stay, you know, not stay in rough shapes, and then we'll finalize it when you'll bring both up together, and you're going to give me a presentation similar to like what Christina has right here. You're going to have one row you can call your orthographic view, and another row you can call it perspective turnaround, where we can see the character's feet. Okay? All right. Any questions? Oh. All right, I'm going to stop the demo then. Thanks, guys. Uh-oh. Where'd my mouse go? There it is.